Manx Radio Sport.
A very good evening and welcome once again to Friday Sports Preview on Manx Radio. Rob Pritchard here with you until 6 o'clock. Let's take a look at the sporting action today, this weekend and beyond. Coming up tonight, a special homecoming today for the man himself, Sir Mark Cavendish. We hear from the Manx Missile on his Manx reception. A big traditional curtain raiser in Manx football takes place this evening ahead of the new season. We hear about what's going to be going down in the Eric Fletcher Charity Shield. FC Isle of Man also return to action this weekend. The Manx Grand Prix is upon us. We hear from the organisers, and Ramsey Rugby previews the latest campaign. That is all to come this evening. Very good evening and welcome to a jam-packed Friday Sport Preview here on Manx Radio. Rob Pritchard here with you until 6 p.m. to take a look at the sporting action throughout the week, going into the weekend and of course beyond, as always. And we're going to start things off tonight, well, with the major news that's been taking place here on the Isle of Man this afternoon. 35 Tour de France stage wins, 17 Giro d'Italia stage victories, World Road and Track Champion, Olympic silver medalist and so much more. But today, Sir Mark Cavendish returned to the place where his glittering career began to take part in a homecoming at the NSC in Douglas. His homecoming, which included a lap of honour in which the next generation of young cyclists were invited to join him in, took place on the NSC Raceway, which will be renamed in recognition of his astonishing career to date. Well, afterwards, I got the chance to speak with the Manx Missile himself to find out what this afternoon's occasion has meant to him. So Mark, thank you for taking a few minutes of your time, of course here for what has been described as a homecoming after what's been a very memorable summer and a great career to date so far. What has this occasion meant to you?
It's beautiful to see so many people out. was very, very nice, but the best thing was seeing the amount of kids on the bikes. I know every Tuesday dot longer than before I was riding a bike was down here with hundreds of kids every week, and to feel that, to see it still going like that, and to see the kids loving riding their bikes, ultimately that's why I do it, to get people on bikes, to get people enjoying riding a bike, to get them to feel what I feel about being on a bike, and to see that joy is evident. It's something very, very special. And just off that as well, the fact that you did make that gesture to allow children to join you as well on the raceway where you started out your career as well, how important was that gesture to you? Yeah, sure, it wasn't to allow kids, I actively wanted them. Like that's what this place is about. Okay, we can train here. We're incredibly lucky on the island to have a national sports centre. For such a small population, have this complex and things for sport across like all ages, all categories. It's pretty special, and I started here, all bike riders started here, and it's where the future champions are going to start. So it's ultimately what I want. It's not for one person riding around on their own, it's for kids coming down and enjoying riding. And a glittering career and so many achievements which are well documented. But speaking of the facilities, the NSC Raceway here that will be named after you, what does that mean to you as well? It's an incredibly nice recognition. You know, like I said, I started here. Many cycling champions started here, and to know that I can start here, and my name can carry on long after I've finished racing a bike is it's an incredibly humbling recognition. Like, I'm very honoured, so thank you. And looking back on the career to date so far, obviously it's been high octane for well over 20 years really at the top level as well. Have you had a chance to maybe think about just what you've achieved, or has it sunk in yet? Have you thought about it? No, not yet really. It's business as normal, you know. I normally take a break with my family after the Tour de France, try and recuperate, try and come back down to a normal level. And it's only been 4 weeks since we finished, so carry on riding and carry on just relaxing a little bit, and look forward to the last part of the season. And how important are those moments, like you say, you know, being able to spend time with your family and just being able to switch off sometimes from what is, you know, a very high octane sport? That must have been very important now and over the years as well. Absolutely. I think it's important to know why you do what you do. You always have to put everything you into what you do and what you want to achieve. But to remember where you're from and why you do it, and realise what else makes you happy, it's very, very important to get a right balance there. And coming back just quickly to the lap as well, and the kids taking part, you see from the Isle of Man continuing to churn out great young cyclists at all different levels. We've still got other riders competing at elite level as well, maybe more to come as well. So would that be a great legacy from your perspective to see the likes of your success being translated to so many others over the coming years? That always has been. That's always been something that's made me immensely proud, the amount of good bike riders that come from here. and it's something that continue to make me proud and something I continue to try and help with as well.
You've probably heard this so many times, but obviously your career takes you all over the world to all manner of places. But how nice is it every so often to hear about the sport you continue to get from here, and particularly maybe from a generation who may not have seen you racing from your early years?
It's really nice, but what's more important is this home. You know, we're a little community here, and it's always nice to come back. It's always nice to be wherever we are in the world. You know, you see a Manx flag as well, and a little hay boy coming from the side of a mountain, and they always make you smile and remind you of where you're from.
And lastly, looking forwards, have you got any particular plans at the moment in the next couple of months, or are you just taking a bit of time to reflect and see what comes?
No, I'm racing. See how I am racing. So I just carry on as normal.
The Manx Missile, Sir Mark Cavendish there, and you can also hear the thoughts and reactions today from residents and fans on today's event, as well as see photos and videos from this memorable day over at manxradio.com and on our social media channels.
Manx Radio Sport.
Well, elsewhere across the NSC complex, tonight sees the traditional curtain raiser ahead of the new Manx football season. The 2024 Eric Fletcher Charity Shield will see Men's Premier League champions Ayre United take on 2024 FA Cup winners Rushen United at the Bowl from 7:45pm this evening. Well, ahead of the showdown, I've caught up this week with Ayre United player manager Nick Hurt and Rushen United first team manager Andrew Moody. I've asked them for their thoughts on tonight's game, but also how their pre-season preparations have gone ahead of the new league campaign getting underway at the end of this month. So I'm joined now by Ayre United player manager Nick Hurt. Nick, thanks very much for joining us. Now,
no problem.
Premier League winners last season. First off, quite generally from an Ayre United perspective, how successful do you feel last season was?
I think it was really good. I think the way that Peel had put a lot of pressure on us by being ahead in the league, especially did sort of ask a few questions of our players to see if they could cope with kind of the pressure and the goal difference between the two clubs. And towards the end of the season, it did get quite hard with the fixtures coming thick and fast, and injuries and holiday suspensions and so forth. But in general, for Ayre United to win that league last season was pretty special.
2 of the last 3 seasons, Ayre United has won the top flight. What's been the key, do you think?
Well, I mean, 3 seasons ago, myself and Rick joined. We were lucky to have quite a good group of players already at Ayre. You know, we just generally got them well organised and played to their strengths, and I think the players bought into it, trained twice a week, you know, even did things in their own time. And yeah, the first season was certainly a special season, getting the treble. And
for you yourself, I think I've heard some people joking that you seem to be aging backwards on the pitch itself as well. So what's keeping you going at this point? What's keeping you driving forward, not just as a coach but as a player?
I think it's being mixed amongst the sort of Ayre United players and committee and sort of the small support group that we have. They're just such a great bunch of guys to be around. We do have a good laugh. The football's serious, don't get me wrong, but there's a good sort of spirit off the field. That kind of drives me on to be involved with that. It's quite enjoyable.
Now, a couple of weeks into pre-season, so generally from the team's perspective, how have things been going?
Pre-season's probably been the worst pre-season we've had. Key players being away on holidays, sort of injuries, believe it or not. We've played a few games. We've played Peel, Rushen away, and we played Michael on Tuesday night. So we've come through it okay. The results don't really matter, but it's obviously not nice to lose a friendly pre-season. But Tuesday night against Michael was the first game that the likes of Sean Kelly and Jay Callister have played, and a new signing, Lewis Moran as well. Another signing, Leo Tregurtha from Rushen. Young lad, plays fullback, so he looks quite promising too. But like I say, they've only had sort of 45 minutes together, so it's been quite poor.
But with that in mind, though, coming up against someone like Rushen United, when there's something like the Charity Shield on the line as well, how how much incentive is that to not just get good minutes in the legs, but also go out there to try and maybe a bit of a psychological edge, get some silverware on the board before the season starts?
Yeah, it's a tough fixture against Rushen. We've had a good few battles with them in the last 3 seasons. Last season in the FA Cup final that went to extra time and penalties, Ayre United had 9 players and Rushen came out winners. So the game's going to be tough. From our point of view, we will approach it in the right manner. We've got pretty much everybody available apart from Johnny Shields, who unfortunately got a broken rib in the friendly against Peel, so massive blow, missing him, so he's going to be out for at least maybe 4 to 6 weeks.
And finally as well, you are of course going into the season as defending Premier League champions once more, but any other objectives outside of that as well, looking to target success in the other cup competitions this season?
Yeah, it's harder when you're champions. Everybody wants to beat you. I've tried to explain this to to the guys. I don't think they've quite grasped it. They'll probably learn the hard way maybe the first few games, but you want to win every game that you play, but it is definitely down to availability of players. We do only have a really small squad, but when we've got that sort of first 11 stroke 15 man squad, we are quite strong and difficult to play against. First thing on the list is obviously the Charity Shield. If we can win that, then we can push on.
Joined now by Rushen United first team manager Andrew Moody. Thanks very much for joining us. Just very quickly before we get onto the team itself, you did actually step away from this role and come back into it. So what was the thinking behind that?
Hi Rob, thanks for having me up. Yeah, so the idea was to spend a bit of time away from the game, and from a management side, we can spend some time with the family, try and get back into playing. I was close-ish to 500 games for the club, so I wanted to try and push on and see if I could get over the line. But unfortunately, I was left with a decision to make and gone back into it, and we're looking forward to the season starting, but it does feel like it's quite early. It feels like it's maybe a couple of weeks too soon, but we're ready to go.
How have things been in terms of the preparations so far?
We've had a good scutch of young lads coming through from the juniors into senior football for the first time. We've had really good numbers at training. Most training sessions have had 30 plus, which has been brilliant. Hard to manage for the coaches in particular, but it's looking good. The lads are sharp, they're fit, they're still going through their journey of pre-season, working hard, getting the vital minutes in for friendlies and whatnot. We've got a bit of a new system and a new shape, a new plan B to work on, so it's trying to get our plans and thoughts into the squad, into the team, but attitudes have been brilliant, work rate's been brilliant, the lads are all on the same page, we all know what we want to do this season. We had to sit down as a management squad with the players to sort of talk through what our ambitions were for the season, what our expectations were, where the bar is, the ambitions, so I think we're all on the same page, and as I say, we're excited and good to go.
Speaking of objectives and where you'd like to be, last season in the Premier League, I think, indifferent campaign, I think it's fair to say, mid-table. We're used to seeing in the last few years, particularly Rushen United challenging towards the top. So what was maybe missing last season that you're hoping to add this season to get yourself further up that table again? Yeah,
last season I think we finished 6th overall. We had a good cup run, which has got us to the Charity Shield final, but as a club and as a squad of players, we fell short of our targets really. We'd like to be, as far as I'm concerned, and as I say, we've sat the players down, we want to be challenging as high as we can for the league. We also want to be involved in as many cup competitions as we can as in the latter stages. The expectations are slightly different to a reality at times because there are some very good clubs out there, some really good young players coming through at various levels and various clubs, so trying to challenge is easy to say, but obviously we need to have the consistency, we need to have the work rate, the attitude. The first target obviously is getting through the final on Friday and trying to do something that we're probably up against, being underdogs against a very good Ayre team. We're looking forward to that, but Charity Shield, it's always good to try and get the season underway quick, but the first aim is Railway Cup qualification. From there, minimum expectation as far as I'm concerned is trying to challenge for top 4. We're not going to get ahead of ourselves, but we know we've got the players that have come through from the youth and also some new signings that have given us a little bit of different style of play. We're looking forward to getting going from that side, yeah.
Winning the ECAP FA Cup, did that give you and the players further confidence and belief that you can challenge with the best, despite what was maybe a bit of a below-par league campaign?
Yeah, definitely. Winning the FA Cup was brilliant for the club. It was great for the lads. We had a pretty tough run onto the cup final. We played against a good St Mary's team in the semis, but we know that with the players that we've got coming into the club and the team, that we've got the tools to sort of kick on and really challenge. We've strengthened at the back. We've added some additions into the midfield. We've got some new forwards. We've got lads coming back from travelling. We've got lads that have signed from other clubs. So we feel that we've got different attributes to the team and skills that we maybe were lacking in certain areas last season. So with that in mind, how well we did in the FA Cup, we fully expect to be kicking on and at least trying to compete with the likes of Ramsey, Peel, Corinthians, Ayre, Laxey, the big teams that are out there this season.
Ayre United player manager Nick Hurt, and then just then Andrew Moody, Rushen United first team head coach, ahead of tonight's Eric Fletcher Charity Shield match. Just as a reminder, that gets underway at the Bowl tonight at 7:45pm. Tickets for tonight's game, £3 for adults and £1 for OAPs and under 16s, and refreshments will also be served inside the ground tonight. Well, elsewhere, sticking with football, and after giving a damning assessment of his side's midweek defeat on Tuesday, FC Isle of Man's manager will be hoping for a much better display when they're back in NWCFL Premier Division action tomorrow. After being on the wrong wrong end of a 9-goal thriller against FC St Helens 3 days ago. The Ravens are back on their travels at Litherland-Remica on Saturday. Well, despite his unhappiness at their last display, Paul Jones insists they're seeing plenty of positives, which they hope can turn into a positive result this weekend.
I think in many ways we're playing some of the best football in possession that we have. Well, I think we definitely have since I became manager. So there's lots of positives. I think that the thing that shocked me on Tuesday night was how porous we were through the centre of the pitch when we spent so much time working on not being porous in the centre of the pitch, and that's what kind of shocked me a little bit. I mean, I use the unacceptable word a fair amount at times with the players to help identify standards, and I think it was important for me to state publicly that level of performance when we were defending wasn't acceptable, and it's not, and it can't be. It's small margins, and I was angry. We were all angry and upset. I think sometimes it's good for people to see that as well in a club-facing media interview. But, you know, shouting and screaming doesn't get you anywhere. It just makes you feel better. It doesn't actually solve any problems. So we know what went wrong on Tuesday night in out of possession, and it's not really tweaking. It's just going back to what we know we should be doing, and then hopefully there's a good performance again on Saturday against Litherland.
The anger that maybe you and the players felt of what happened on Tuesday night, how important is it in the days following and going into this weekend that you've been able to harness that in the best way possible, and that anger and frustration doesn't become a toxic trait? Yeah,
it's healthy to expect more of yourself and each other, and as long as you say, we use it in a positive way, that's just going to drive us to be even better than we are at the moment. So anger doesn't have to be a negative emotion. It can be used as fuel for a positive outcome, and you know, that's one of the things we're trying to help the players as people kind of work through those emotions and how they can harness them for the good of each other and the good of themselves. And you know, as young men, you're taught that you need to act a certain way to get ahead in life, and part of our job is to help them to manage themselves and manage their emotions so as they have a healthy, happy life no matter what environment they're in. So this, you know, there's always opportunities to coach, and it's not just about coaching them as football players on the pitch. It's also about coaching them as humans, as how to get along and how to work together to get the collective outcome that we want. They're a really positive group. They're just itching to really put a string of consistent performances together. I think we've seen everything over the 4 games that we need to do very well in this league. We just haven't seen it all in one game for 95 minutes. So that's the challenge on Saturday.
Now, we're only 4 games into what is a 46-game league season, so a very long way to go just yet. But given the last 2 results in particular and how some teams have performed, do you feel that maybe even at this early stage you might be on the back foot a little bit in terms of trying to catch up those teams at the top?
No, not at all. This league is already producing all sorts of interesting results, and I expect that to continue for the majority of the season. If any team goes on a run of games where they're losing, then that's a problem. But in the same way, there's not many teams that go on a long run of winning game after game. We haven't got as many points as we had this time last year, I don't think, but I think we're playing far better than we were. So it's just about keeping believing in what we're doing.
Looking to this weekend, then up against Litherland-Remica, and when we've spoken a couple of times about Litherland in the past, you've described them a little bit, correct me if I'm wrong, as like one of the toughest teams that you've come up against. What makes them difficult opposition to overcome?
Litherland tend to have quite a lot of rotations. They're a clever team. They've got experienced players at the back who use that experience fantastically well, and you maybe on first sight you think, oh, we should be able to get at them, but they use their bodies really well. They're in really good shape and positions, and their attacking players are clever. They always give us a really tough game, and the last season or 2 they haven't really stepped up their levels against some of the other teams in our league that we would expect them to do well against. So hopefully we get the Litherland that some of the other teams faced last season, and not the Litherland that we faced this last season on Saturday. They've had quite a lot of change at the club, I believe, this year, and have struggled a little bit at the start of the season. So we need to make sure that we're expecting a very difficult game, but making sure their season kind of doesn't get any better, and make sure ours gets a bit of a nudge in the right direction.
FC Isle of Man manager Paul Jones there, and Litherland-Remica versus FC Isle of Man kicks off at Litherland Sports Park tomorrow at 3 p.m.
Manx Radio Sport.
Well, turning our attention now to motorsport, and a major occasion on 2 wheels getting underway this weekend. The 2024 Manx Grand Prix returns for its 101st year this Sunday and runs until Monday, the 26th of August, in what will be the finale to the latest Manx road racing season. Well, not only has it once again been a major task logistically to get the event on this year, but plans are afoot aiming to provide more security for the meeting in the long term. As John McBride, chair of the event's organisers, the Manx Motorcycle Club, explains.
Recently, the Manx Motorcycle Club have recently presented a strategy to the Department of Economic Development, to the Minister Tim Johnson and Sarah Maltby and Mark Lewin, along with Paul Phillips and his team, on a 5-year strategy to bring the Manx up to a level where it's considered one of the premier classic events, classic and clubman events of the racing calendar. We're just waiting for that to go through government, and hopefully that will secure our future for at least 5 years, perhaps 10.
What can that potentially look like going forward to try and secure the long term? Can people expect any major changes going forward?
Not major changes. I mean, it's tweaking, really. I mean, I think we've got a good format and a good formula, but I think it just needs tweaking and just keeping on top of things and making necessary changes to regulations and necessary changes to the event in general to keep it on top. And I think one of the things which we'd like to see is probably a little bit more going on the sidelines, but time, the 3-day format for the event tends to limit that. So, but we'd like to see a little bit more put in perhaps by clubs. But, should we have any weather disruption, it does kibosh them a little bit. So that it's one of those awful things, really, where we're in a cleft stick situation. If we lengthen the event, we've got nothing because we can't accommodate it through marshalling and medics. And if we run the shorter event, we're struggling for additional entertainment for spectators.
How much have the likes of, say, fans, teams and competitors been consulted on this?
They have been consulted, particularly the teams more than anything, because a lot of the money comes from the teams, but a lot of competitors have been consulted at random on their thoughts, and quite frankly, they're quite in favour of things. I don't think there's anybody who's come up with any negatives, really. One of the things we want to do at the end of this session, it's 3 years now since we've been running this format, and as a club, we'll want to go out to our competitors, all of our competitors, to see what their thoughts are on the event.
Now, for the last couple of years, it's been running on a 1-week format, effectively. Some people have been sceptical and at times maybe critical that it's not the 2-week format that people once knew it as. You've maintained over time that although you'd like to see it return to a 2-week format, you maybe don't have the likes of the marshal and medical cover available to do so. Is that still the case? And do you see MGP continuing in its current format for the long run?
I think it probably will, yes. I can't see there being a rapid increase in marshal numbers and medic numbers available. And what stood 3 years ago still stands today, unfortunately. It's unfortunate because we are at the mercy of the weather. And it's, as has proved the last 2 years, we've had weather disruption, which has caused quite a few problems, really. But we're hopeful this year that will be a thing of the past and we'll have a trouble-free meeting.
John McBride, the chair of the Manx Motorcycle Club, the organisers of the Manx Grand Prix, getting underway this Sunday and running from the 18th to the 26th of August. And don't forget as well, if you want to have a look at all matters motorsport here on the Isle of Man, we've got you covered with the dedicated website motorsport.manxradio.com. All the latest news and details, particularly of the upcoming Manx Grand Prix, as well as podcasts with highlights of this year's racing on the Blount course, as well as the 2024 Isle of Man TT races, and of course the superb Journey to a Dream podcast, delving into the lives of those who take part in road racing here on the Isle of Man.
Manx Radio Sport.
And finally tonight, in the last few weeks, we've been catching up with the Isle of Man's rugby clubs to hear about their plans for the new season starting next month. This time, it's the turn of Ramsey, who enjoyed some big success during the last campaign in both domestic and off-island competition. Their captain is Matthew Meechan, who's explained what the long-term picture is at the Northern Club and what they made of their efforts in the previous season.
So we're quite an ambitious club, really, for what we're capable of. We had a successful Cheshire Cup campaign that entailed in 3 away games against English teams, and then there was a CIS conference that we went into final against the top team from that. As it turned out, the top team from that CIS conference was Western Vikings from Peel, and we ended up in an All-Manx final, beating them up at Fletcher. I think perhaps we'd have liked to have played against an English opposition in the final, but as well, it's the first time there's ever been an All-Manx contingency for one of those finals. So that was good, and then we were building up into the Manx Cup. We drew against Vagabonds in the February, lost to Douglas, beat Nomads, and then lost to Douglas in the final. final. But really, we're kind of worlds apart from where Douglas are and how frequently they can play in the leagues, just purely for funding and sponsorship reasons. Essentially, if we were to enter the leagues, we would go in at level 10. Now, hopefully, if we ever did get into the leagues, we'd be more like level 8 at a similar level to Vagabonds. But it's having that consistency of quality opposition that really dictates the difference.
Like you say, you're quite an ambitious club as well. So do you take little lessons here and there from when you come up against a team like Douglas, who are currently the top-ranked side, shall we say, on the Isle of Man?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, it's kind of getting as many opportunities to play against quality opposition, such as Douglas, such as Vagabonds, to learn. And it's exposing ourselves to uncomfortable situations. And that's how you can grow and learn.
Got a couple of results against Vagabonds as well. So does that give you all that belief that if the stars were to align and somewhere down the line you were able to get into, say, the English league systems, that you'd be competitive?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, because of the way the RFU is set up, we'd have to enter from the bottom and work our way up. But at the same time, that would be a good chance to become reaccustomed to league rugby, because it is quite attritional. And if you don't have the squad size to support that and that commitment, it can leave you in quite a big hole, as Manx clubs have found out in years gone by. We're kind of trying to build quite steadily, not biting off more than we can chew. So I think if the stars did align, we would try and put ourselves in the best place for that.
Looking forward, obviously, pre-season preparations for the respective clubs well underway. The season due to start next month. So from Ramsey's perspective, what's the ambition for this season?
So for me, I really think we have kind of 3 goals. I'd love to develop the second team and get second team rugby going again. That might be very occasional. That might look quite mixed in and muddled. But, often the second teams are the heart of the clubs, and that is where the social members come from. That is where the youngsters first have their taste of rugby, and it's where the old heads still hanging onto their boots kind of all merge together, and that really is where the culture of the club mixes. We push a lot of enjoyment in the club whilst also trying to push ourselves to get better. So that would be such a good mixing point pot to get going again. Additionally, we want another successful run in Cheshire. We're in the next league, or the next stage up, the next level up of competition. So hopefully that'll bring tougher challenges against New Brighton and Wallasey. We played New Brighton a few years ago, the season that we just got promoted after winning the league. I think it was 2018 or something like that. And we had a very young team there. We kind of lost a lot of our experienced side after that promotion, and they demolished us, quite rightly. But those 17-year-old lads have become grown men now. So going back at it again is a really exciting prospect. If we could get ourselves in a position for a final, that would be very successful. And then lastly is, again, we're chasing that Manx Cup, really trying to chase Douglas down. I feel like, and this is very much my own opinion, I feel like man for man, starting 15s, we could give them a really good run. And that was exemplified kind of in this year's final, where it was 5-0 at half-time, and they have a much greater strength and depth of their squad. Not that was the only factor, that they are a quality outfit. But hopefully if we can build the strength in that squad, then we can get that little bit closer to them.
Ramsey Rugby Club captain Matthew Meechan there. Well, that's all we have time for this week. Many thanks to my guests this week, Sir Mark Cavendish, Nick Hurt, Andrew Moody, Paul Jones, John McBride and Matthew Meechan. And don't forget, if you want any further details around the 2024 Manx Grand Prix getting underway on Sunday, details of the qualifying and race schedule, road closures and more over at our dedicated website, motorsports.manxradio.com. Details on the MGP and much more besides. And if you want to catch up with any of the Manx sporting news throughout the week, head on over to the Manx Radio Sports Hub over at manxradio.com. And if you've missed anything tonight that you'd like to catch up with, this Friday Sport Preview episode will be available as a podcast very shortly. Thank you for joining us. Have a wonderful Friday evening, whatever you're doing, and have yourself a wonderful weekend as well. But from us, until next time, it's bye for now.
Manx Radio Sport.